You're tormented.
It feels more like...
Haunted.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Ending Explained. My name is John here in Burns Views, and today we were talking about Alex Garland's new film, Men. Starring Jessie Buckley, Rory Kinnear, Papa Asidu, and Gail Rankin. Garland's new folk horror film tells a tale about what it would be like if every man you saw looked the same and kinda wanted to kill you. But before we begin, if you could, be sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe so that the YouTube algorithm doesn't cut my hand right down the middle vertically. Also, there's going to be a lot of spoilers for the movie Men, so if you haven't seen the movie Men, consider yourself warned, and without any further ado, let's talk about it. Men. Men was released here in the States on May 20th, 2022. Back in January of 2021, it was announced that Alex Garland would write and direct a film for A24. Garland, who is most known for his cerebral imagery, jumped onto the scene as a screenwriter for films such as 28 Days Later, Sunshine, and Dread. His first directorial debut was the sci-fi film Ex Machina, a what-if scenario if artificial intelligence could be mistaken for being a real person. He followed that up with Annihilation and the TV series Devs, the latter of which were both captivating visually but were a little muddled about what they were actually about. These films may not be for everybody as they can be a little bit open-ended and abstract. However, there is no doubting that Garland has a very distinctive vision that is very much his own. Jessie Buckley and Rory Kinnear were both attached to the project from day one. Buckley, who many will know from Chernobyl, Fargo, and the Charlie Kaufman film I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Rory Kinnear is also best known for playing Bill Tanner in the James Bond films, such as Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, Spectre, and No Time to Die. Filming began on March 19th and wrapped on May 20th, exactly 1 year before its release. It tells the story of a young woman who goes on a solo vacation to the English countryside after the death of her ex-husband. When she first arrives, everything seems to be okay at first. She meets Jeffrey, the landlord that shows her around, and while he is off-putting and awkward, he seems to be a nice bloke nonetheless. Then she meets a bunch of men that look just like him. A naked man that wanders into her backyard, a cop that seems apathetic about the trespasser, a priest that blames her for her husband killing himself. Yeah, he's fun. The bartender, two locals at the pub, and a little boy that gets angry if you don't play hide and seek with him. All of these men look exactly the same, but at no point does our main character ever call out this fact. In fact, she seems to be completely oblivious to it. She briefly encounters all of them, and they all seem to abuse her either physically or emotionally if they don't get what they want from her, leading her to see them all the same way, as being no different than her ex-husband, who emotionally blackmailed her into staying into a marriage that she didn't want to be a part of. The naked plant man, who I think represents Adam from Adam and Eve, sticks his arm through a mail slot only for Harper to violently stab a kitchen knife through it, causing him to pull his arm through, revealing an arm that has been cut in half vertically. Very Jason Part 4 if you ask me. All the characters that Rory Kinnear tried to appear and tried to attack her in one way or another, but we know they're all the same character in a sense because they all have the same hand that's messed up. The priest does try to sexually harass her and assault her, but she's able to get away before he can do so. She drives away and almost hits the landlord Jeffrey, and finally just ends up back at the house, and this happens. You know what scene I'm talking about. We all know what scene I'm talking about. Rory Kinnear, as the naked man, goes into a crab walk, presents to the world his new vagina, which gives birth to himself. And then that version of himself instantly gets pregnant again, gives birth to himself again, and then again, and again, and the entire time, he's not giving birth to like an infant. It is a fully grown man, standing at like 5'8", 200 pounds or so, like a big-ass man. And this happens about 6 times. I know when I was walking out of the theater, one of the press people were asking me, well, what did you think of the film? And I'm like, well, I could have done with about 5 less deliveries, I think. I think you can play that trick once, maybe twice, but by the time you do it, what was it, like 5 or 6 times, I kind of looked away. It was overkill, in my opinion. I felt like I was watching one of those computer animated animations that kind of do messed up things. They're not bloody, but they're just gross. And yeah, it's creepy. It's just extreme and gross out. It's not scary or tense. It'd be like if I took an axe and I chopped off my hand and I made you stare at the stump. It's not scary. It's just gross out and puke-inducing. But finally, Harper's ex-husband James, who killed himself by jumping to his death, appears. And when she asks him, "What do you want?" He simply responds to be loved. Which, hey man, don't we all? Doesn't mean you should harass everybody. And I guess that's the point of the movie, is that Garland is framing men as being toxic, and it's very much about how we communicate with women. And I don't take away the fact that there are men like that out there. I think the problem with this movie is that it's a very much a generalization, because every single man is an asshole, a bastard. He's abusive. And Garland is trying to open a conversation on that, which I think has been an open conversation, but okay. And I felt like we needed like one male character that wasn't a complete douchebag, because if you don't put that one decent guy in there, you just kind of feel like, well, this is a propaganda film, right? This is just like men suck. Like, men, am I right, ladies? Like, it's... But there was a couple things that stuck out to me, some symbolism, if you will. In the opening of the film, we see there's a giant tree with apples. She takes an apple, takes a bite. The landlord calls it forbidden fruit.
Apple from the garden?
Yeah, it was delicious.
No. Mustn't do that. Forbidden fruit.
Oh.
Which is very much an allusion to Adam and Eve. Eve took the first apple, putting men forever in original sin.
A woman cut Samson's squaff of power. A woman's responsible for original sin. A woman asks for the head of John the Baptist. Read that book again sometime. Women are painted as bigger antagonists than the Egyptians and Romans combined. It stinks.
You know, and then Rory Kinnear's character, the Naked Man, he takes a bite of the apple later, and he's very much a representative of Adam. The tunnel that we see, I think, represents death, because she's looking down it, she's grieving her ex-husband, and as, you know, we all know, when you're in a dark tunnel and there's light at the end of the tunnel, they say stay away from the light, but sure enough, at the end of the tunnel there's light and death, but it's her ex-husband at the end of it, and he comes right down the tunnel, he comes back from the grave, back from death, to chase her back to the house, which, again, symbolism, I get it. Death, she's grieving. Honestly, if you told me all the characters that were in her head were fake, I would completely believe it. I think it's a little bit of column A, column B. I think a lot of it she's imagining. I think she's met these people, which gave her the template to imagine them later. I think by Act 3 it's on her head though. I don't think she's seen any of them. It makes no sense that Jeffrey would be standing in the middle of the road. Why? Why would he be standing in the middle of the road? Why would the Naked Man come back? When we get to the very end of the film, it's very much like Ready or Not. Our main character is sitting on some steps, she's covered in blood, her sister shows up at the end of the scene, and this feels like reality. And she sees Harper, and Harper is smiling. Probably because she has come to the conclusion of all of her grief. All the problems that she's been struggling with, at least, have now found a resolution, and she can move forward, not having to think about her ex-husband, not having to be bogged down by everything that's happened to her recently. She is now at peace. Now, if you look at the scene, people kind of have pointed out that, well, there's blood on her, therefore it must have really happened. I disagree. I think it could be her own blood. I think she might have been pantomiming this entire end of the film. So was it all in her head? Seems most likely. According to Alex Garland, he said, "It's about things I've been thinking about for a long time, and some of that have been touched upon in my earlier films. But what I want to do with it is make a film that people can project onto as much as possible, when the viewer is a participant in the narrative. The film works in a way as a strange sort of mirror, and people will have their own ideas about what it is about, or not about, that means something to them." Sure, that's not lazy screenwriting at all. This film leans very hard into the idea that the story is a 50-50 split between the storyteller and the story receivers. More than any film I've worked on, this one was anticipating an audience would join the conversation. Garland stated that he made the deliberate choice to subvert horror movie tropes and make the assailant more pathetic and sad as the film went on. It was an interesting thing to work out because it takes away the one thing in pure genre terms makes a horror film scary, which is the power of the monster to be invulnerable to attacks and the power to harm. What happens here diminishes that power massively, as that force becomes increasingly pathetic, so it perhaps invites a different kind of response. The film is clearly about grief. Harper basically takes all the blame, even though she says she doesn't, for what happened to James, and now she's struggling to figure out if she's really responsible or not, and if there's a line in the middle that might divide it. She's angry at James, but also feels bad for him. She resents him and she grieves him. What happened was sudden and unexpected, and she doesn't quite know yet how to cope with these feelings. However, it's through his passing that Harper now sees men in the same way as she saw her husband, as people that will attack her physically or emotionally if she doesn't give in to their wants. All the characters that Rory Kinnear play are a bit toxic in different ways. They blame her, curse her, or just straight up don't take her seriously. Now, I know what Garland was going for, and I can't actually say this really feels like a feministic film, if that was the intention. If I were to recommend a movie that was more like this, I would recommend The Night House, and I would recommend Promising Young Woman especially. That movie definitely knows what it's trying to say, it's done way better, and this one just feels a little bit too abstract. When we talk about elevated horror, this one just feels a little bit too elevated. And I loved Ex Machina. I did. I enjoyed Annihilation, and I was kind of let down by Devs, but I do like Alex Garland in theory. I don't know, I just found it to be kind of cliche. I found it to be kind of like a storyline that we've been seeing since The Babadook in 2014. That movie was successful. Copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, boring movie. That's just my take. I do want to say the performances were pretty good. Rory Kinnear especially, I think he would be a great Mad Hatter in a Batman movie. And Jessie Buckley, she does a pretty decent job. I don't think she's amazing. I think she is like a 7 out of 10 on like the performance scale. But Rory Kinnear was definitely channeling his inner James McAvoy, playing all these different types of characters. And that is probably what people are talking about the most with this movie, is that the characters, the acting is pretty good. But comment down below, what did you think of Alex Garland's Men? I'd love to get your thoughts. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. I did take a short break, but I am now back. So be sure to subscribe and give the video a thumbs up, and we will see you next time.